Now, instead of crying over spilled milk, let's rather identify how can we then tweak this thing in a way that we mitigate the damage that has been done. So we're not asking you to destroy your government, but we are saying let this be supported by the revolutionary movements. That says there are certain things that a revolutionary movement can do.
So getting away from CDN, we look at the Southern Cameroons Town Hall.
Another brilliant initiative. I think the Town Hall has carved a place for itself in the sense that it has managed somehow to stay and operate as a neutral entity that brings Southern Cameroonians from all walks of life to come and discuss issues of pertinence, which I think is very, very good. I haven't attended many. I've attended very few, but I get to follow from time to time when I can the activities of the Town Hall, and I have to say that is a brilliant initiative.
Now we go to the IG, the SACO IG, the split in the SACO IG, one faction led by SACO and the other led by, is it Madame Marianta?
Marianta.
Yeah. So what's your take about this? Now we have 3 IGs.
Okay, SACO IG, Marianta IG, IGK, SCCOP IG, I don't know, to be honest. Listen, this is normal in the kind of struggle we find ourselves. It's happened in different countries. You had in Zimbabwe, up until today, you have what they call ZANU-PF, which is basically the ZANU Patriotic Front, which was different. And at some point, the MDC, and then you had the MDC, Changirai, and so on. It will happen where you have splinters and little groups come here and there. It's unfortunate because I think these are things we could have avoided. But why is it that these things have not been avoided in other countries? Because you will always have greedy people, you will always have dishonest people, you will always have power-hungry people. They always want to. They see the least opportunity, they jump at them and they grab it. It will always happen. Now, we are where we are. I don't really think much is going to come out of all of this. But my position on the formation of a government has always been clear. It's too early, it's premature. The IG will only help to divide, isolate, and destroy the struggle. And that's exactly what it did. I'd said this, and this has been part of the discussions, debates that we're having within the Alliance today. You provide leadership, you've got a vision, it's effective, get the right people, you put them, everything falls into place. You don't need to be a president or something for that to happen. The moment you create what you call a government, in the context we find ourselves in, what you're doing is selecting a few individuals, 7, 8, 9, in the case of SACO ICOME, 74 individuals, right? You put them there. And then the rest of the population is here. There is this gap that you feel, and there is no mechanism to fill that in a case like ours, especially where we are operating in virtual spaces. You create a revolutionary movement. What you're doing is that you're building cadre gradually over time. So from a small community, and that is where we lost it. You asked about South Africa. What can be done? South Africa took the wrong route, and like I said, it followed everybody else in doing what was wrong instead of staying with what was right. What happened? A few individuals quickly rushed to grab positions in some government, and all of a sudden they are elevated here. The rest of the people are here. But if you think about the early days of the struggle, it was a gradual curve that happened, that at every level, people saw themselves as part and owners of this entity.
So by implication, you're saying that if SCCOP was still in existence, the government would have been more efficient since it had its root built from grassroots up?
That could have been an option, but that also needed a lot of thought and a lot of work. There was no work, no discussion, nothing. It just like, bam, it happened. If you have a movement, a revolutionary movement, and in lots of ways, that's what we were proposing with SCOP, the damage has been done. The decision has been taken to put in place a government. Now, instead of crying over spilled milk, let's rather identify how can we then tweak this thing in a way that we mitigate the damage that has been done. So we're not asking you to destroy your government, but we are saying let this be supported by the revolutionary movements. That says there are certain things that a revolutionary movement can do that the government cannot do. And I've said it lots of times. Immediately it was done, I was dispatched to some country. This is a country I've been to. I've met people at the top of the government before. Friends of mine, I'd worked with them, I'd lived there. But then you go there the next time and nobody talks to you, nobody takes your calls. Why? Because all of a sudden, you're claiming that you're coming in the name of government. The question is, government recognized by who? Are you a part of the African Union? No. Are you a part of the United Nations? No. So what government are you talking about? And on what basis do you expect me as an official of the government to come and visit you or to come receive you in my country? You're not here as my friend. You're not here as a revolutionary movement that has come to visit another revolutionary movement. And we can give an excuse to the world that, no. This person was here because last year he was here as part of SCCOP or as part of SCAPO. We received them as a revolutionary movement receiving another. But now this same person is coming here in the name of some government. We don't want to create a diplomatic scandal, so we're not going to talk to them. So splinter groups of the government and whatever, for me, it comes down to the same thing. The idea of a government was a very bad idea.
Now, looking at the next initiative is the Act, which I think is almost like the Swiss process. So what's your take about the Act?
Not much. To be honest, I haven't paid much attention. What I can tell you, as you probably recall, is that when SCOP went to the second or third meeting of the Swiss initiative, we took the decision to withdraw and walk out. Like I said, go in. If things are not going right, walk in, give your reasons very clearly, and you walk out. And part of that was the formation of ACT. It was not well orchestrated, it was badly done, and it was an ambush. Ultimately, I learned that the humanitarian dialogue, HD, which was facilitating this process, hurriedly put into place the ACT in order to have something to show when the UN General Assembly met that year. And in the process, our people were ambushed. You can't ask people to come to a meeting, they arrive, and then you're like, okay, you need to form some act without due consultation, without applying their minds. And so instead of facilitating and helping our people to decide, HD took upon itself the leadership role of telling our people what to do. And like I said, because most of these people have got no experience in this thing, they fell into it and they did it. And for that reason, SCOP walked out. We refused to be part of ACT. So I don't really know what's going on in there. But if you ask me, it's a waste of time.
Now, the next is the Southern Cameroons Alliance, which you are the chairperson.
Yeah.
What can you tell the Southern Cameroonians people about this movement?
The alliance is work in progress. The idea of the alliance is not very different from what SCCOP was when we put it together, which is bringing together movements, liberation organizations to form some kind of an alliance, leadership council that takes decisions and moves things forward together. I mean, there are lots of influences that came along that influenced the formation of the alliance. As you know, SCOP is a member of the alliance, and there are other movements. The idea behind this was to stay away from the rot and all, far from the madding crowd, from all the negativity and the toxic atmosphere, and so build something, and in the process of building, make sure that you avoid the toxicity. So be targeted, be very deliberate, and be careful in your selection of who comes into the fold and becomes part of the alliance. And I think that's what we've done. We've made some real progress. And like I said, the only reason why we are now doing what we're doing is because I think we've come to the point where we are confident enough that we can provide the resources necessary and provide the leadership necessary. Resources was always a key part of what we wanted to do. And I think we are at a point almost where we can confidently step forward and say, okay, we can do this as the alliance.
You're talking about alliance and all of the things that makes up alliance. I think it was last week, there was a flyer on the social media disassociating you as the chairman of the alliance and even SCOP. How true is that?
We actually had an alliance meeting 2 or 3 days ago to talk about this. But when you see a flyer that goes out with no name, with no signature, with no date, with nothing, just the logo of the alliance, you've got to ask yourself, is this serious? So it's something that we've just ignored and we've just moved forward.
Okay, so you talked about alliance, bringing other movements to be part of it. what are the criteria in case you have an initiative, you want to be part of Alliance, even as an individual?
Yeah.
What are the criteria?
Well, the criteria has been set. Like I said, it's work in progress, but the criteria for membership into the Alliance is set. I know that there are a set of documents that prospective members will need to read, sign, and even movements that want to be part of the Alliance will have to go through a process of induction, acceptance, acknowledgement, signing a memorandum of understanding before becoming a part of the Alliance. And that's something that can be shared with those who are interested. Like I said, the Alliance is not a church. It's not some church where you walk in when you want and walk out when you want. So we are very stringent. And I think as days go by, it's going to be even more stringent to gain membership into the Alliance.
You have been talking more about the structures.
Yes.
And building strong structures.
Yeah.
What are some of the structures within the Alliance to meet up the aspirations of the Southern Cameroonians people?
Well, there is something that we've largely ignored and where we're putting a lot of emphasis at the moment is ensuring that we maintain a very strong and visible presence diplomatically. You might remember that by the time Barrister Elias Eyambe got abducted from Nigeria, he had already been deployed by us to Addis Ababa to be the head of our diplomatic liaison there. That's something we've largely neglected. So when you talk about structures and approach and so on, for me, that's one of them. The need to have a presence in the key capitals of the world. The other is building membership. I mentioned, I don't know, when we had our conversation around membership, you've seen the tendency of people putting plasters or posters on their door to say, oh, I have this member, I have this member, I have this member, and they call a whole series of names as members. But when you break it down, some of these are just organizations that are a one-man organization. It's just somebody goes and registers something and says, the name of my organization is this, then all of a sudden it's a member. For me, it's just empty plaster. What you want to do is build real membership. So one of the things that the Alliance wants to do is go back to the drawing board. Something we have done before and we did successfully is build structures on the ground, build community structures. And for me, that's when people start to feel ownership and they start to feel like they're part and parcel of this. And where it then allows for people to progressively get right to the core of the Alliance. Mm-hmm. That's we're adopting the same structures that we have for SCCOP, which is the onion layered structure. You come in from the outside. When you qualify, you go in one in, and then you qualify, you go the next. And so you don't have this gap between some people there and then the rest of the masses, but you have layers upon layers that allow for you to grow into the layer, and so on. And that's then when you talk about structures, that's our thinking and that's our approach. Like I said, a lot of these take resources. You need resources. If you have to deploy people to 5, 6, 7 capitals globally, you need to be able to resource them. And what we are working on now as the Alliance is getting those resources to ensure we put it at the disposal of whatever action needs to go to the voices in the bushes and so on. We just really have a large spectrum. We have our people who are in exile and so on. We need to come up with some mechanism that looks after their welfare. You cannot feed everybody, but what kind of lobbying are you doing within international organizations to make sure that our people are fed? So all of these things we are thinking about and we're putting them into place.
So within the Alliance, what are some of the constituent groups that constitute the Alliance?
Well, you have SCCOP, you have the SCNC that was represented. In fact, one of the things that we did at the very onset of the Alliance to ensure that we get the leaders and the leadership in detention to belong is ensure that instead of going the IG route and the government route, we rather look at the leadership in detention being represented within the Alliance. What that means is that you want the voice of the leaders in detention to be heard at all times. So whatever deliberations we do, we want to consult them always, and we get to know what is their own point of view. And their point of view becomes part of the discussions and the debates that we have, and ultimately the decisions that we make.
It is known that most leaders in the revolution or groups are coming from the northern zone, and it seems to be same for the Alliance. Is this by design?
For me, let's start with this whole myth of the northern zone and the southern zone, which is a fabrication of La République. I don't believe in this southern and northern zone. When you look at the outlay of our counties or our divisions or districts, what you want to call them, I prefer districts. It's very clear that even the layout doesn't make much sense. I don't know how you distinguish somebody from the BLM from the person from Pinyin or Awin, because I think they're very related. When you ask that question, I understand where you're coming from and what that means, what is generally called the northern zone. But you would know that every liberation struggle in the world, every revolution in the world has been led by a particular group of people. Why is that? If you take, for instance, SWAPO, Namibia, the Namibian War for Independence, it was largely led by the Ovambos. They are the ones, they basically formed probably 80% of the fighting force. If you take South Africa, for instance, the vast majority, in fact, the people who were at the forefront of the struggle for liberation of South Africa were the Xhosas. If you take the South Sudan, for instance, it was the Dinka. So what is it that pushes a particular group of people to be at the forefront? They need to be the most angry. And very often the most angry is the most deprived. The most deprived often is the most radical. And so the regime in place has this tendency of isolating that particular group. And so they play one group against each other, which is very much the same our case today. Not long ago, we had just one university. It was in Boya. The roads are paved. A lot more was done. And of course, this was not done because the people of Fako or Meme or Mochindian are more loved. It's simply because they're sitting on strategic wealth. And so they're appeased in a certain manner to a certain extent as opposed to the others. When you go to your northern zone, it's generally completely abandoned to itself. And so there is more anger. So it just becomes normal that based on that anger, you will have more people from this part of the territory who are more angry and who are more involved and who are taking more risks. It's just natural with every struggle across the world, every revolution. So is it by design or by accident? For me, I don't think it's anything to do with the design. Is it by accident? I don't know, but I'll tell you one thing. And that's as far as the alliance is concerned. People take on positions of responsibility based on the three factors that we continue to put forward as the alliance. The one is competence, the second is integrity, and the third is commitment. As long as you meet those criteria, then we'll ask ourselves, number one is what? Competence. What do we need? An electrical engineer? Well, are you an electrical engineer? When we look at all those who have got the same qualifications, are you the most qualified? Yes. We don't ask questions where you come from. You play that role because you're the most qualified, because you're the most committed, and you're the one with the most integrity. So we don't look at people's villages. And it's funny, we need to start dispelling this thing and kicking it out. I remember in the days of the governing council, when I received a call from a gentleman from the UK complaining that he has looked at the list of all the people in the governing council. He cannot find the name of anybody from Ngi. I was like, seriously? So you want us to go from one village to the other, make sure that every single village is represented? So we need to dispel that. We need to dismiss it with the content it deserves. That people need to be given positions on the basis of where they come from. We've tried that with IG and so on. As it is today, is thanks to this notion of, people need to be given positions because of where they come from. Not how good they are, not how committed, not their integrity. So we don't believe in that nonsense.
People describe you as being too hard. Is it by nature or the struggle made you to be that hard?
It's funny because a lot of my comrades think that I'm a bit too soft. They complain that I tend to be too lenient when I should be harder. Is it the struggle that has made me that? I guess to a certain extent, but listen, comrade, I come with experience in other domains, from the private sector through international organizations. You don't grow in these systems and become an expert at a very high senior level by being soft. And for me, being hard is not like it's fashionable. I wish we could all be soft, but you don't run a revolution without discipline. You don't run a liberation struggle with everybody doing whatever they like and going in whatever direction. It doesn't work that way. So it's important that some hard decisions are taken. Yes, sometimes I might be a bit intransigent, inflexible with certain decisions, but it's also because I know that if you don't do that, you leave it open, sooner or later you regret it. So yes, I'd rather be hard than soft.
This question of Southern Cameroons finding a country that can back them up, it has been so difficult. Why is it that impossible for the past 4 years to secure a country to be friendly to the Southern Cameroon cause?
It comes as no surprise. In 2017, we had private entities, venture capitalists who were running behind us, wanting to invest millions into the struggle. We had governments which were willing and actually met with us, and they gave us their support and encouraged us. When the greed sets in and the stupidity, and it becomes a comedy show, responsible stakeholders stay away. I remember that when we organized the first conclaves, we were so discreet about it that even some of our people did not know where these meetings were taking place. Do you think it's because the Nigerian intel did not know that we were in the country? Of course they did, but we did it with the utmost respect. That's why even the resolutions of the first two conclaves, when they came out, they were signed in Buea. At the bottom, if you go back to those documents, it says signed in Buea. Why? We are trying to respect the country that is hosting our people for that moment. And you can't just go out there and flash through whatever you want on social media. From the third conclave, it became a comedy show.